Yeah, see, there she is. Okay, welcome to the Lovecraft eZine Sunday show. Today is May the 4th, 2014. Ellen's just now coming on, but...
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, how are you?
I'm sorry, my computer crashed when I went back on and I can't get into my email, so thank God.
Oh, that's all right. We're live now, so that's...
Okay. All right, can you see me?
Yep, you came just
Hi,
at the right time.
Okay.
So, Ellen, I don't know if you know Rick and Justin here. They join me a lot for a lot of these chats.
Wait, which is which? I see...
I don't know.
Who's in the purple shirt? Who's the one in the purple shirt?
Say hi, Rick.
That's Rick. Hi, Rick. And Justin, you're in the glasses there?
Justin Steele. Yep, nice to meet you, Ellen.
Hi there. Oh, hi. I know your name.
Yeah, I do the Arkham Digest, so I've done some reviews of your anthologies and whatnot.
Okay.
Thanks for straightening that out, because I didn't know who they were either. So.
Now, I'm sorry, who's Mike? Who are you? I mean, who's Rick?
I'm Rick.
What's your last name?
Lay. L-A-I.
Hi. So, now, I'm sorry, but I missed who you are.
Rick's an author. He can probably explain himself a lot better than I can explain him. You like that pulp stuff?
I mainly write new pulp literature.
Okay. Hi there.
And Justin just put out, with Ross Lockhart, just edited Children of Old Leaves, that's what it is.
Which I'm waiting for a copy of, I think.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly.
Larry Baron tribute anthology.
Yeah.
Y'all check with Ross. I think he's sending an ARC.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he was going to, yeah. But why have I heard your name, Justin? Have you been in touch with me recently? I may have seen you on Facebook. I mean, who knows?
Yeah. We're Facebook friends. I think I said something to you about the anthology, maybe. And I think Ross had already said he was sending a copy, but I'll see if I don't know if he's waiting to send you the hardback full edition or ARC. But the Arkham Digest, I've done some reviews, so I've probably sent you links to those.
Okay, thank you.
He was probably in some kind of trouble, and you noticed, Ellen. You probably saw
that must be... You noticed I did remember to shut my blinds so you don't get blinded.
So how are you doing?
I'm okay. I was in Hoboken today.
What were you doing there?
I met a friend and we were wandering around.
Oh, okay.
Hot and cold, sunny and rainy. It was just like on and off.
Yeah. Well, for everybody watching that does not know, Ellen Datlow has been an editor for quite a long time. Edited science fiction, edited horror, other things. Lovecraft's Monsters is her second Lovecraftian anthology.
Oh, that's the old cover. You know, I never got an arc.
This is the new cover, yeah.
Is the new cover.
Yeah. That's the actual cover. The other one was the arc, and we did the cover after that.
Yeah, you know, and actually that's a good first question. Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to say that Ellen's first Lovecraft anthology was Lovecraft Unbound, came out several years ago, and in my opinion, one of the best, very best Lovecraftian anthologies out there. But anyway, yeah, let's start with that. So, because the first time I heard about Lovecraft's Monsters, I saw this cover being advertised, and I thought, oh, that's a cool cover. And of course,
the reason it was changed, okay, we got John Coulthard to do the interior illustrations. So once he started doing the illustrations, it didn't really go with the cover. The cover that's on the arc, which is really good. I mean, I love that cover, and I don't remember the name of the artist. But they decided, Tachyon decided it would be better to go to see if John could adapt one of the interior illustrations, which he did, for the cover. So that's why, because it went better with the illustrations that were created for the book.
Yeah, and the interior, there's one for each story, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
And
for each critter. Yeah, and there's also one of the people. Oh, I have a cat visiting. Here's Bella, who's on the lap.
They're really great.
Each critter is there's a definition of it or a description of what it is at the back, and that was created by one of the assistants at Tachyon. So yeah, and I think it came out really beautifully. I'm really pleased with it. And the only you know, the only downside is not in hardcover. People say, "Is it going to be done in hardcover?" It's, you know, no.
I know I'd asked you this before. I was hoping that you were going to do another Lovecraftian anthology, and finally you were able to. Do you want to talk a little bit about it? I guess in a way it's a bit self-explanatory what it's about. It's Lovecraft and Lovecraft's Monsters, but could you just clarify that and go into a little bit more detail about exactly what you were looking for with these stories? Still there?
I think her sound had went out.
She froze again. Her computer tends to do that. I had her turn off her computer ahead of time to make it so it hopefully wouldn't do that. But yeah, she'll come back on in a minute. We're used to it. This happened last time I chatted with her too, and then it was just me talking to her, so I was like talking to myself.
We can fill the space up for you this time.
That's right, exactly right. So,
if you had to, what would be your favorite story in this anthology?
You talking to me?
Well, both you and Justin.
Oh.
Well, I'll tell you, it's pretty easy for me. There she is.
We got disconnected. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's all right. It happens. Rick was just
whatever you said in the last 5 minutes.
Rick was just asking me my favorite story. We'll get back to what I was asking you. I don't know how much you heard, but Only the End of the World Again. I love that story.
Mm-hmm.
But,
people say that, you know, why didn't I use the emerald?
Because it's been reprinted 1,000 times.
That's exactly why. I love that story, and actually, I do love that story more than what's the title again? Something about emerald.
Study in Emerald.
Study in Emerald. I mean, I love that story, and I would have used it, but yeah, that's the issue. I was trying not to do stories that have been reprinted over and over and over.
Yeah.
So that's why I used a different one.
Can you talk a little bit more detail what you were looking for?
I'm sorry, pardon?
Can you talk in some more detail about what kind of stories you were looking for?
Well, I was looking for story. Well, with most of my reprint anthologies, what I try to do is find stories that fit the theme. As with any anthology, fit the theme as broadly as possible. But for a reprint anthology, something that hasn't been reprinted all over the place, if possible. And also stories by people who are not necessarily known within the field for doing horror. For example, I had an anthology, Hauntings, from Tachyon last year, and I used a Connie Willis story, Distress Call, specifically because she's not thought of as a ghost story writer, really, and I thought that was interesting. And so for Lovecraft's Monsters, I used the Howard Waldrop and Steve Utley story because they're not, specifically because they're not considered Lovecraftians or certainly not considered horror writers, and I just thought it would be interesting, and that it would reach first of all, they would reach a different audience, and that readership would see there are other writers out there than their typical Lovecraftian writers. So it was twofold.
Right.
That happened to be my favorite story in the book too.
What's going on? The phone's ringing.
Your phone's ringing?
Are you there? Oh, no, it was the Skype, you know, it was this thing that was ringing. It was really weird.
Sure.
Someone's ringing over on your end. But no.
I think your computer's being mean to you today.
Mine's not happy being turned on again.
Rick, what were you saying? Which one's your favorite?
I was saying the Waldrop Utley story is my favorite story.
I'm really pleased to hear that. At least one reviewer hated it. And then they didn't see how it was connected, blah, blah, blah. You know, they just said, we don't like the story. You know, so I'm really pleased that you enjoyed it.
Yeah, I read that actually. I think when it was first published, in an anthology 20 years ago or something.
Yeah.
In the 80s, I read that.
Oh,
Yeah.
what was the reasoning there?
Sorry.
What was
the
reasoning?
Frankenstein monster in it. I'm sorry, I'll shut up. What?
No, that's okay. I'm sorry. What was their reasoning? Why didn't they like the story? Why didn't they think it fit?
I think they didn't think it was Lovecraftian enough. You know.
That's such a.
I mean, it's got a bunch of things. It's not only Lovecraftian. It's also got the Frankenstein monster in it. I mean, it covers a lot of weird territory.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool.
Makes it interesting, I think.
It's kind of a hybrid Edgar Rice Burroughs, Mary Shelley, Edgar Allan Poe, Lovecraft story.
Yes, right. It's got Edgar Allan Poe, certainly. Yes, everything.
Well, they didn't think it was Lovecraftian enough. That was one of the questions I wanted to ask you, and I think I've asked you before, but what, in your opinion, Ellen, makes a good Lovecraftian story?
That's not a pastiche, I mean.
Yeah, exactly.
For me, it's certainly not the language. I mean, believe me, that's what I think makes the pastiche. When you take the language and like transport it someplace else. I mean, his language, some of it, I think most of us will admit, was pretty overblown. But it's more the cosmic horror, the fantastic creatures that he created to live underground, out in the sky, in the mountains of madness, wherever. I think it's a combination of the monsters he created and the cosmic horror. That is, to me, worthy of contemporary writers using for their own material.
Yeah, I think I feel much the same way.
I mean, if I read a story that's got his language in it, I think I'd throw it across the room at this point in my life.
Yeah, I've gotten a few of those, and no, it's you pretty much toss it in the reject pile right away.
Yeah, I mean, I read a lot of them years ago. I mean, they were doing pastiches. They really weren't building on his work. I think I may be wrong, but I think it's only in the last 20 years that writers have started to build more on his work and go in their own directions and using their own imagination and their own language. But when I used to read the Lovecraftian anthologies, the ones that were by new people, but they were slavishly emulating him and copying his language, which just doesn't really work usually.
No, there can be some good pastiche, but I think by and large it doesn't work when they're trying to be Lovecraft when they're writing.
No, there's no point, really.
These are all reprints except for, I believe it's John's story. Is that right?
Yeah.
How did that come about? Was that just did that just kind of happen, or?
Well, I probably asked him. I don't remember exactly, but I went to people. Stefan Jimenowitz was very helpful. He's always helpful. I mean, he recommends people or writers. But my cats are fighting. Stop it! Cut it out. At least they're not coming in this direction, but they're knocking things over.
Give them time.
They're chasing. I'm sorry, I forgot what the question was.
John Langan's story.
John Langan's story. Oh, okay. All right. Well, basically, what I do in any reprint anthology, I'll go to the writers who I'm aware of writing this kind of thing, and I'll say, have you done anything, a Lovecraftian story, or anything you consider Lovecraftian? Have you done hauntings or ghost stories? When I did the haunting anthology.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't actually rely on writers to remember what they've written. That's one thing I've learned over the last few years doing reprint anthologies, because I said, well, wait a minute, I published that in the year's best. How come you don't remember that? That's a such and such story. But anyway, so I went to various writers who I thought probably had written Lovecraftian stories, and I'm sure I probably approached John or maybe John heard Laird, and Laird Barron is living at John's place in the East Coast. So it's possible that Laird mentioned it to John, but probably I asked John, do you have anything? And he said, no, but I'll write a story for you. I said, but I can't pay more than, really. I'm paying reprint. I penny a word for the reprints. I can pay you, I don't remember what I paid. I said maybe I can pay 2 or 3 cents a word for an original, which is something I would never do. And that's just too cheap. But he said, okay, and all right. So the thing is, John, unfortunately, is always late. And he had promised, I think that's the one, he promised to get it to me for my birthday probably 2 years ago, Christmas, or whenever it was at that point, New Year's Eve. And he didn't, and he got it to me like 3 months later, which is why I think he says something at the back of it, a belated Christmas present. But no, he took a long time to write it, and I think it's great. So that was the one original. I think it's a novella. I can't remember if it's out.
It's enough to be a novella.
Along with Children of the Fang.
Yeah.
Anthologies, but usually certain publishers can't afford it. Hold on, you still there? I've just lost the picture. Let me see.
No, I
Oh,
can hear.
God. But I can't. I don't know where the hell I am. Hold on, I have to.
Well, we can hear you and see you. You're doing good on that end.
Where
You
the heck?
okay? Maybe did your window get
Oh wait, I can
minimized?
see. Yeah, I think there it is. Okay, that is strange.
Okay.
It went away. Yeah, but it's back now. I guess it did. I don't know what the hell it did. But
That's
I'm
all right.
back.
Then my other
So yeah,
question
so I
was,
mean, I love to get an original, and I would. What I like doing, my first few anthologies, I did half originals and half reprints, and that's because it's cheaper to do that. You know, obviously you pay less for a reprint. Sorry, that's my. I tried to turn that off before. That's my email reminder, but I'm afraid if I go there, I'll crash. So hold on, maybe I can turn it off. You know?
well, no, I do know what you mean, Ellen, because you know when I just did a King in Yellow issue with Bill Pulver editing, and that Robert Chambers guy, he was so good about it. I reprinted one of his stories. I didn't have to pay him anything.
Oh, really? Oh, you're lucky, boy. Hate dealing with those. Those dead authors are the best if they don't have an estate that's greedy.
Those dead authors in the public domain are the best, yeah.
Yeah, they are.
Then I noticed, let's see, Gemma Files has 2 stories in here.
They're actually
poems, yeah.
Oh, it's a poem. Okay, I forgot about that. Okay. I know I'm hogging this. You guys have questions for Ellen? I don't want to hog this floor here.
I've got one.
What'd you do?
You mentioned before you had problems with selecting which Neil Gaiman to put in, and you went for the one that was less known. I assume you had the same problem with Carl Edward Wagner.
Yes, actually, I wasn't even that aware that he had done that many Lovecraftian stories. I think that was probably one that Stefan recommended. Yeah.
Because most people either reprint River of Night Dreaming if it's a King in Yellow story or Styx.
Yeah, well, Styx is all over the place, so yes, I didn't want to use that as good as it is. So yeah, I mean, the problem with that is you use stories that may not be as wonderful as the others. I mean, Styx is a brilliant story. So, you know, but I didn't want to use it because I know probably everyone's read it.
Yeah.
Well, you know, as far as the Neil Gaiman story, they're both really great stories. I actually personally prefer Only the End of the World Again. But, you know, that other one's been Study in Emerald's been reprinted so much. It's just, it seems like every other anthology sometimes got that story in it, and he's actually got it for free on his website as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's a problem when a writer who you really like, you might really want in the book, only has done a couple of stories on a particular theme. I mean, it's the same thing. Michael Chabon has only written 2 really, really terrific horror stories, The Black Mill and The God of Dark Laughter, and they've been used all over the place. You know, they've been just overused. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, no. Every time, once in a while, the screen freezes, and I can't tell if anyone what's going on.
Sometimes you'll get a little bit of a lag, especially if your computer doesn't like Google Hangouts, which I don't think it does. So, but that's okay. Justin, did you have a question? Like I said, I don't want to hog the.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask. I think a good amount of the stories in there, probably a decent percentage, have to do with like Innsmouth. You know, Lovecraft's Innsmouth kind of come into play. Is that just because there's so much written out there?
Yeah, I mean, it was not intentional.
Yeah.
I mean, what I did try to do is choose stories that had different creatures in them, that weren't all the same creatures. But as far as place, that wasn't a consideration. It was more of the creatures themselves that I wanted to get a good variety of, you know, of different creatures that Lovecraft imagined.
Cool.
I don't think you guys would definitely be the ones to correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think I've seen that particular twist on the theme before. You know, there's a lot of Lovecraftian anthologies out there, but just specific.
Well, there are some I've seen that have concentrated on specific creatures.
Yeah.
Like Dagon or I don't know, or Cthulhu. And actually, Tachyon and I were trying to figure out if there was another thematic Lovecraftian we could do, but we couldn't think of a theme that I thought was rich, that we agreed on, that was rich enough. Someone was saying, well, what about places? And it's like, well, that's the issue. Most of the stories take place in Innsmouth. I don't think there are enough variety. You couldn't do an illustration of Innsmouth. I don't think it's possible to do another book like this with the illustrations. Not on Lovecraft anyway. We couldn't figure out a way to make it viable. Another thematic Lovecraftian anthology.
Right. I have a question from the audience. Go ahead, Justin. I'm sorry.
No, I didn't say anything. Sorry, I was leaving.
Oh, okay. Sorry, my hearing, you know how it is. Got a question from the audience here for you, Ellen, from Zach Graham. A little bit off the Lovecraft subject. He says, I'm a big fan of a lot of psychedelic science fiction, Sam Delaney, early Harlan Ellison. In your opinion, Ellen, who are the serious new voices in psychedelic science fiction?
What is psychedelic science fiction? I'm not sure. I've never heard of that expression.
I'm just reading the question.
Who was the first person? He mentioned Harlan, but who was the other person he mentioned?
He mentioned Sam Delaney, early Harlan Ellison, and Norman Spinrad. So.
I really don't know what he means by psychedelic. Does he mean from the 60s? I mean,
yeah,
they wrote very different.
Chip
Delaney wrote very differently from Harlan Ellison. Their stories are not the same at all.
Yeah.
And actually, neither is Norman. I mean, Norman was very political always. Harlan. Oh, let me see if I can get rid of that. I'm sorry.
When I hear the word psychedelic, I just think 60s and 70s, and I don't know what I think. It's kind of.
I mean, I think of hallucinogenic, and I don't know what. I don't think that's what the writer means. I mean, what the questioner means. I don't know if he can clarify. Maybe later we can.
Well, if you're still watching, Zach, send me another email.
I don't understand what you mean by psychedelic. It could mean a period or hallucinogenic. I'm really not sure what you mean. So.
Joy Shea wants to know what's your convention or appearance schedule for 2015. And the rest of this year, I think.
This year, I can tell you. I'll be in Portland. I'm going to World Horror next week, Thursday. I'll be in Portland, Oregon, and then I'll be going to San Francisco for a few days after. I'm going to be signing and meeting and greeting at Borderlands Tuesday night in San Francisco. I don't even know what date that is. Let's see, 15th or something. I'm not sure. 13th. Anyway, a week from this Tuesday, and I'll be going at the Nebulas for one day, Saturday, the day of the Nebulas. The next convention I'll be going to is ReaderCon, I guess, in July, and that's outside of Boston. And I'll be going to the WorldCon in London. And I always go to World Fantasy, which is outside of Washington, D.C. this year. And I think that's it for this year. And next year, I just know the big ones. I mean, I'll go to Spokane as WorldCon, wherever World Fantasy is. I can't remember if we've chosen a place yet. Saratoga. And ReaderCon. I mean, ReaderCon, World Fantasy, and probably World Horror, which is often with the Stokers, and World Fantasy. Those four are the ones I generally go to every year. If someone invites me to one, I'll go. I mean, if someone pays my way, I'm eager, or if I can do it, if it doesn't, screw up my schedule. Right. I was just asked to go to the Necronomicon one in Providence in 2015 as a guest, and I can't do it. I mean, it's the same exact weekend as WorldCon, and I said, it's like. It's never an issue. I always go to WorldCon. That is a thing. It's not an option. So if you have that, and they're celebrating Lovecraft's 125th birthday or something, I think. And I'd love to go. It sounds like a great convention, but I can't because it conflicts. If there's another Killer Con, I'll go to that. I was a guest of honor last year, and it was fantastic. Then I gather that James White is not doing it again. He's burned out. But if he does it again, it was in Las Vegas, and I'd never been to Las Vegas before, and I would be happy to go back to that. It was a really small, very high-quality convention. It was great. It took place on one floor of this hotel, and I've been at conventions like that, and they suck. This one was fabulous. It was just really, I had a great time. So you know, basically if I'm invited to a convention someplace and it doesn't conflict with something else, I may go. But that's my convention schedule for the next year or so that I know of.
Yeah, it seems to me from my side, looking that you have authors that people are fans of certain authors, and they have some authors have quite a following, obviously. You seem to, in my opinion anyway, I don't know if it seems this way to you, have just as much of a following, if not more, as some authors do. I've said it before that if you're in a bookstore and you see edited by Ellen Datlow on the shelf, just don't even look at the title, just pick it up.
It's enough for me.
Well, thank you. It doesn't make me a bestseller, though. I mean, it's like if I can sell my anthologies, I'm happy. It's weird. So yes, I do have people who will buy anything I edit, and that's great. I mean, I love, that's really nice, and I appreciate it. But it doesn't mean I can sell every anthology. It doesn't mean that my anthologies all sell. I mean, in the scheme of things, 5,000, even 5,000 people buying a book, well, let's say 2,000 people buying an anthology or something, it's hard to get a publisher to pay me enough that they can afford and that I can afford to do the anthology, an original anthology.
Right.
Because, 5,000 copies is not a lot of sales. And it's like, it makes me happy. Yeah, 5,000 people like my books. That's great. And unfortunately, as I said, in the scheme of the book selling industry, 5,000 copies is not great. In the scheme of selling anthologies, it's not bad. But that's, so it's a balancing act.
Yeah.
I can't afford. I will not pay for an original anthology. I won't pay writers less than 6 cents a word, and that's cheap. And I feel bad. But I have to consider how much I get paid to do something, how much they get paid to do it, and my agent gets a cut. So I can't do certain things for less than a certain amount of money for originals. Now that's why reprint anthologies, it's less work. It's a lot less work. I don't have to edit the stories, and editing the stories takes a lot of time. But I still have to choose them, and and I have to read a lot. If I'm doing a reprint anthology on a theme, I read as many stories as I can find that people recommend or that I know about on the theme, and then try to pick an interesting grouping. So I mean, it's less work for me. It's more reading in a way, but it's less work because I don't have to edit the stories.
Right.
So so I can do it for less money, and the writers get much less money too. So.
What do you have coming up?
Well, this year I have a lot coming out. This year I have a ton of stuff coming out.
Yeah.
Lovecraft's Monsters just came out. The Best of the Year #6 will be coming out, I think in June, but I'm not sure. Mm-hmm. Fearful Symmetries is coming out at the end of May, I believe, or early June. That's the one that was kickstarted by eZine and me, and that's a non-theme anthology. That's coming out. It should be coming out, I think, at the end of May. I'm not absolutely sure. And then The Cutting Room is another reprint. I mean, I'm surprised. I don't know why Tachyon is bringing out 2 reprint anthologies by me. Lovecraft's Monsters, and in the fall, I don't know exactly what the date is. The Cutting Room is coming out, and that's a reprint movie horror anthology. It's not, most of it is horror. There are some stories that are just weird, but most of them are horror, and there is one original in that, too, by Stephen Graham Jones.
Yeah, you know what, Ellen, could you talk a little bit more about the Cutting Room? Because I think that's a fascinating theme.
Well, the way it came about is Casey Lansdale and I tried to sell an original movie horror anthology, and we couldn't. We just, no one bought it. And so I was talking to Jacob at Tachyon about, well, what do you want to do next? He said, well, what do you want me to do next? And somehow it came up, and I said, well, maybe movie horror, and he said, that's not a bad idea. And then I went back to Casey, and I said, the title for that was slightly different. Last Cut or so. I forget what the actual Final Cuts, maybe. I'm not sure. Mm-hmm. But it was similar, so I asked Casey, is it okay if I sell a reprint anthology called, The Cutting Room? And she said, sure. I didn't want to take a title that was too close, and screw it up for if we actually could ever sell the anthology, the original one. So anyway, Jacob liked it, and I actually went on Facebook at one point, Jill, who works Tachyon, and Jake, they weren't sure about the title, and I said, "It's perfect. Are you kidding? It's perfect." Okay, so let's go on Facebook and take a survey. Like they were talking about. I forget their alternate. You can find it on Facebook probably. But anyway, I said, okay, people, who likes this title and who likes this title? And the cutting room came out way ahead. So I was like, ha. So it's the cutting room. Like I knew it was. It's a great title, It's like, please, give me a break. I mean, once in a while I come up with a good title. So yeah, so it's a movie horror. And it's mostly horror, but not all horror. But it's a movie horror anthology.
Right.
I have one more coming out this year if you want to know. But if you want to keep going back to cutting room, I can.
Well, I think Rick has a quick question before you continue.
Is the movie angle that it's horror stories set in the movie industry? Is that?
Yes, yeah. And when reading for it was really interesting because you see all the subgenres of movie horror, of movie stories. You've got the famous writer. You've got the famous actor who's disappeared and comes back or whatever, or you have the person who disappears into the screen, or you have the person looking for a mysterious movie and something horrible happens to them. And there are things like that in the book. But I realize there are these subgenres of movie horror that they're all over the place, And I said, no, I don't want that. They're all the same. Oh, and then there are the ones about King Kong being real, King Kong and Anne, whatever her name was. So I mean, they're that kind of story. So there are like tons of stories about King Kong. There's tons of stories about Anne Darrow. That was her name. There are like 5 stories. I didn't use any stories about King Kong, by the way. I just said nah. It's like they're not. I don't want them. They're not horror, and it's like nah. So I didn't use any of those. But I got an interesting grouping. Again, those stories I didn't want to be overused. One of the best. Well, see, the thing is this movie horror or not? One of the best stories, and it's a story I didn't take for the year's best either the year. The Things by Peter Watts. Peter Watts, W-A-T-T. And it's from the point of view of the Thing.
Right, that's good.
The year I didn't take it. When everyone in the best year took it, I mean, for science fiction and fantasy and horror. And I decided, I really love this story, but it's not horror. It's from the Thing's point of view, and the Thing's point of view is not horrific at all. It's just doing this thing. And I think I probably didn't use it for the cutting room because of the same reason, because I thought it was over-reprinted in a short period of time. But that was the idea. So, and then the last anthology I have coming out this year is Nightmare Carnival from Dark Horse, which is carnival stories, carnival and circus, dark stories, dark fantasy and horror stories about dark carnivals and circuses. And that's all original. That's all originals.
That sounds great.
It's got a dead clown on the cover. Does it have to have a dead clown? Can I have other things than the dead clowns? And you can see the cover on Facebook. I think I also put on my blog. Yeah, so that's got a really interesting variety of things. So that's what's coming out this year. And then I have the doll collection I just finished, which is the doll horror anthology, and that's coming out from Tor next year.
Oh, are you kidding me? That doll stuff freaks.
I've been trying to sell that for 5 years,
That freaks the hell out of my wife. I'm going to have to buy that book and just give it to her and say, here.
You may want to vet it for her. Some of the stories are really creepy and horrible and violent, and some are not. So you might want to vet it for her.
If you want to creep her out, have her watch the episode of Rod Serling's Night Gallery where they adopted Algernon Blackwood's the doll.
Which one is that? What story?
Algernon Blackwood's the doll.
Oh, I don't know if I remember that.
I think the TV adaptation is better than the written version.
Well, Rick, she even got freaked out by the just went out of my mind. The Night Stalker episode with your favorite episode.
Yeah. Rather phony mannequins.
Yeah. That even freaks her out. So.
There are remember the mannequin one, the Twilight Zone, the famous mannequin one, where the woman goes. Anne Francis, I think, plays a mannequin. She's goes into its department store, and turns out she was a mannequin who got away or left, and comes back and doesn't remember.
You're right. I need to play that one for her. That's a damn good
But that's not horrific.
And then there's also, of course, Fetish, the one from Trio, Tales of Terror, with the Karen Black.
Oh, the doll.
Fetish, based on Richard Matheson, yeah.
There's actually a sequel to that, because they made a trilogy of Terror 2.
Oh, he did? Or someone did? Okay.
It was Dan Curtis who did both, and he has the third episode. It had a different actress than Karen Black, and I can't think of a name.
Oh yeah, she would have been dead.
Yeah. It wasn't done. It was done probably within the last 10 years. It was the British actress who played Angelique in the remake of Dark Shadows. I can't think of her name, but it was a sequel.
Eva Green. Eva Green? Not Eva Green.
No, not Eva Green. No. The TV one was Ben Cross. Lizette Anthony. That was.
Right. Anyway, there are all kinds of dolls and puppets and voodoo dolls, and there's some really interesting doll things in the book.
Yeah, well, that's great. Yes, I'm gonna have to pick that one up. So for my wife. You mentioned doing a Facebook informal survey a few minutes ago. Something I've been wanting to ask you for a while now. I keep forgetting to ask you. Do you do writers and other people send you messages on Facebook that you? What's the best way to put this? Rather not get, trying to circumvent the system.
Well, the thing, I hate Facebook messaging.
Me too.
Because I can't keep track of things. To make initial contact with me, that's fine. But when this happens with people I know, friends and writers sometimes, instead of emailing me, those Facebook
right.
And I'm thinking, okay, make contact now. They said, let's get together, you're going to be in the city. I said, okay, email me now. But no, they had this conversation on Facebook, so it's back and forth on Facebook. And I have no record of it, or I can't find it because I don't remember. It's not in my email. And this drives me nuts. I said, please just let's have an email conversation now. Come back to email and stop Facebook messengering me. So that happens. I don't mind if people contact me initially, but I don't want to have a conversation. That's not what I use it for. The messaging system for Facebook. It's just, okay, if you can't reach me another way, you can contact me here or on Twitter. I'm on Twitter. But no, well, it drives me nuts. As I'm sure you've seen if you follow me on Facebook, is when I post guidelines for anything, and people just can't seem to read them. They all, it's like, sometimes I get really rude because I can't stand it anymore. It's like, how many times do I have to tell you I'm reading for the year's best year 2014, and then someone says, can I send you something from 2013? I said, what does it say? What does it say up there? How many times? And I think finally in my guidelines, in my written guidelines, when I mail it to someone, I have 3 times. Reprints only, or I'm only reading for 2014. I am only reading for 2014. Do not send me anything from earlier or next year.
No, I saw something just a few weeks ago. It's frustrating. Yeah.
It is. So I get rude. I lose my patience, which I shouldn't, I guess, but it gets exasperating.
Do people try to send you a lot of unsolicited stories and manuscripts ever?
I don't think they can do it on the DM system, can they? People do sometimes. I give them my Yahoo. I have a Yahoo account, and I use that for people I don't know when if they want to make contact and submissions for the year's best and stuff. I will put that email out, and sometimes people just send me their things attached. I was like, don't do that. It's like, ask me first and read the guidelines. No, I do not want to see your story. Get your publisher to send me your story. Once in a while, someone really clueless does try to send me a novel or just something that, well, what are you sending? Why are you sending this to me? What do you want from me? What do you think I do? And they said, oh, can you give me your opinion on this? No, I can't give you my opinion on it. It's something unpublished, or, someone will send me stories and say, tell me what you think of them. It's like, basically I ignore them when they do that. No, I'm not going to tell you what I think of them. It's like, I don't have time to read your story and critique your story. Even if it's for the year's best. If it's for the year's best, if I take it, I love it. If I don't take it, I may give it an honorable mention, I may not, but don't don't whine. I mean, don't nag. No editor wants to be nagged about it. You know, it's like, if I take it, I'll let you know. You will find out if I'm taking it. And no, I'm not going to give you my opinion about it. I'm not going to tell you what you did wrong. That's not my job. If I'm buying a story from someone, a new story, you know, if I get a story I've solicited or a submission for something, then yeah, then maybe then I'll probably give some feedback. You know, if I don't like something, I may try to say why I don't like it, or it just doesn't work for me. But it's not my job to critique every story I receive, and it's certainly not my job to read every novel. I read very few novels. I mean, published. I mean, even published. I don't mean unpublished. I mean, I don't read that many novels a year. I don't have the time, so I pick and choose whatever hits my fancy, basically. You know, what I think I'm going to enjoy. And people, you know, they want to send me submissions for the year's best. I said, you can send it. I can't guarantee I'm going to read it. And I won't read novels as ebooks. I just don't. I read manuscripts. I read anthologies and collections on my e-reader sometimes. But reading a whole novel, I just can't do it. I carry novels around. I actually read print novels. So when people only have something as an ebook, it's like, I'm sorry, I'm not going to read it. I mean, I can tell you right now, there's no way I'm going to get around to it. You know.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I feel bad, but I can't read all the short fiction out there and read all the novels out there.
Oh, so, I feel bad too. I get sent a hell of a lot of stuff. People want my opinion, and you know, you want to be nice to people. I truly do believe in being kind to people, but it's just not something I can do. I just can't. You know.
Yeah. I mean, I think new writers, if they want feedback, they need to go to writers groups or go to a class. If they can go to a writer's workshop, that could help them, or, you know, just interact with other writers who are trying to do the same thing they are.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
But, you know, and I mean, HWA has a mentor function, and I mean, people can get a mentor who can work with them over a period of time, and it's a volunteer thing, and you know, so that's a way to do it. If you join HWA, you know, you can apply for a mentor. You know.
I don't guess I was aware of that, and that's really good advice. So everybody out there watching this, Horror Writers Association, go there.
I mean, there's a lot of interesting stuff we're doing, and I mean, mentor program's been in place for a few years now, but there's also a new scholarship that we just gave for the first time. I was one of the judges. I was kind of dragooned into it, and I enjoyed it. It was not so bad. We gave out 2 scholarships. One, the Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley Scholarship, just for female people. Anyone who identified as female could apply. And the other one was for anyone could apply. So 2 scholarships. I think they're $2,500 each. And the first year it was just given out, and it's for writers. You have to be a member of HWA to apply, but you get the amount of money to take classes, to go to do certain things, you know, to help you become a better writer.
Oh, that's awesome.
And yeah, so I mean, you should go to the website and take a look. I assume that you can look at the scholarship stuff even if you're not a member. You can just go on there and say how it works. So we gave out the first ones this year, and we'll be doing that annually.
You know, along those lines, I think I read somewhere recently that Detroit is doing something like offering free housing to some writers.
Yes, I heard about that.
Yeah. That's pretty neat.
Go to Detroit and get a free house.
Look, you moved to Detroit, just pick a house. So, you just said something about it was available to those that identified as female.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. How important do you think it is for an anthology? Is it important at all? Is it something that should be considered, halfway considered? Gender, minority roles, and stuff like how even, quote unquote, should an anthology be, or a magazine?
That's a really hard question. Yeah. I honestly feel that horror has fewer people of color writing, and fewer women writing, which doesn't mean they shouldn't be encouraged. Than science fiction and fantasy. I mean, I think in the last 5 years, there's a a real influx of people of color writing science fiction and fantasy. And I think there are more women writing horror right now, starting to write horror and getting into horror. But I would never. My year's best has, for years, was mostly dominated by women. I'm sorry, by men. I mean, mostly dominated by men. I would have like 4 women in the book,
right,
or something like that. And it's like, no, I'm not deliberately going to look for male or female. I'm reading everything, and over time, yes, I become aware of it. And do I try to do anything about it? Only by opening myself up, I think, to who's out there.
Yeah.
Just to make sure I do consider things. The biggest problem for horror for me that I notice is that there's so much horror out there that's not in a horror venue. So if you look outside the horror magazines, the actual horror anthologies, you might find material that is horrific, that is horror, and you can find more women and people of color doing that and not realize that, oh, they're writing horror.
Right.
The other issue is, which isn't really gender or people of color, it is the dark fantasy versus horror. What is the difference? I mean, to me, it's a whole feeling. I mean, the thing is, I think a lot more women are writing dark fantasy. Okay, I'm editing. I don't know if you know, I'm editing the Women Destroy Horror issue of Nightmare magazine.
Yeah.
You know about that?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if the people out there know about it, but John Joseph Adams, he is the publisher of Nightmare magazine and Lightspeed. Lightspeed is science fiction and fantasy. Nightmare is horror. And he did a Kickstarter, kind of started almost as a joke. I mean, in a way, women destroy science fiction, because some people have been saying women destroyed science fiction when they came into it, blah, blah, blah. They've been saying that for years, for decades, all right? So he kind of did it to, like, jam the knife in.
Right.
So they made enough money from that to do a Women Destroy Fantasy and a Women Destroy Horror, and he asked me to edit the Women Destroy Horror issue. So we had, we opened it up for I don't know what period of time. I'm not sure if it was 2 weeks or a month, and we ended up getting about exactly 200 submissions, which was not much compared to Fearful Symmetries, which we opened, we opened for a month for open submissions. Oh, someone has a phone call.
I'll mute that.
Okay, it's all right. We got 1,050 submissions for that. So what does that mean? Did we not get out the word to enough women? And I was past 10 stories from that batch, and I actually chose one. But I was looking at the names of a lot of the people who were submitting, and I'd never heard their names, which is good, which means there are all these women writing out there who were submitting. But of the 10 stories I was given, most of them I consider dark fantasy and not horror. Now, that made me start thinking, which I've been thinking for a long time, like, what is the difference? And people ask, what is the difference between dark fantasy and horror? And it's hard to define, but to me it's more a tonal thing.
Yeah.
There's a certain feeling when I read a story that it doesn't feel like horror. And it's not that it's supernatural or not supernatural or psychological or terror fiction. There's something about the approach that just doesn't feel like a horror story, that it feels like a dark fantasy story. And I know that's really mushy and isn't a definition. But I have this feeling that more women are writing dark fantasy than they are what I would consider horror. I mean, that's a total generalization. I mean, there are a lot of women, female, who are writing great horror who I publish and who I love. So is it my responsibility to going back to the original question, is it my responsibility is it any editor's or every editor's responsibility to try to equalize the male-female, the gender, and the racial? I don't know. Is it my responsibility? It's my responsibility to be open to what's out there and to encourage people to send me stories for whatever I'm working on.
Right.
It's certainly created more of an awareness. And in the last few years, I have noticed that more of the people, more of the writers I pick for best horror I mean, the gender balance has changed, but not the racial balance. For whatever reason.
Well, first of all, as an interesting aside, the dark fantasy versus horror thing. It's really funny that you brought that up and John Joseph Adams, because I'm working on a article for him right now for his H's for Horror column, and that's one of the things I'm talking about.
Well, how do you define the difference? I mean, do you have it? Can you clarify the difference?
I certainly wouldn't want to be looked at as Mike Davis said this, so therefore that's the way it is. But the way I personally feel,
I wouldn't either. But
yeah, well, the way I personally feel about it is, I basically look at the dictionary definition of horror. You know, it's this.
What is the dictionary definition of horror?
Well, let's look it up because I don't have that good of a memory.
But it changed. I don't know. Well, tell me what it is, and I'll tell you if I agree.
Well, let's see what it says, because I remember I looked it up at Merriam-Webster, and here it is. A very strong feeling, and this is one I went with, so I'm glad I found this one. A very strong feeling of fear, dread, and shock. And so, I guess my point was that, you know, if you're reading dark fantasy, you're not necessarily, and it doesn't say anything about whether it's good or it's bad, but you don't necessarily feel that.
Yeah, I think you're missing the dread.
Yeah,
I have the feeling. I have to think about it more when I read, but I have this feeling that dark fantasy versus horror. Dark fantasy, there is no dread. Right.
Just because a vampire's in it or a werewolf doesn't mean that it's a horror story.
No, but there can be dark fantasy. Well, it doesn't even mean it's dark fantasy. It could just be fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
But dark fantasy is dark. It's but maybe it doesn't have a sense of dread. I'm not sure. You know what I'm just finding interesting? I'm noticing for the first time, there are little green dots when I talk and you talk.
That's how you know you're talking, because you see the green dots.
Isn't that cute? I'm looking at my screen. I'm so easily amused.
Yeah, well, you know what that's really for is if there's like an echo or something, then I can see where it's coming from. So.
Oh.
But also it helps me know when I'm talking, too. And then if it gets to red, then I know my time has run out and I need to shut up.
Oh.
Just like the Oscars.
Get the hook. But actually, that's interesting. I think the dread part is really important to horror.
Yeah. That's where I was coming from with it, yeah.
And discomfort. I mean, for me, horror is dread. It's a sense of unease that's not the same as in dark fantasy. So maybe, okay, that makes sense to me. Yeah. I like that.
That's
people get mad at me. People get mad at me. Okay, people who hate what I edit,
mm-hmm.
There are people who don't consider me a horror editor because they consider horror in a very narrow way, I think. I think the most important part of horror is creating a feeling of dread and unease, not necessarily, not shock. You know, yes, if there's a shock in it, that's interesting, that's okay, but that's not what the whole point should be, I don't think.
Make a long story short, I feel like if it doesn't produce that dread feeling, then perhaps there's a better classification for that particular story.
Mm-hmm.
You know, whether it's dark fantasy or something else. So, yeah, and I was very interested to see on your opinion on the gender thing. It's a very, very touchy subject. It's
mm-hmm.
really hard to talk with a lot of people without, you know, tempers flaring, which I prefer to talk about things logically, but that doesn't always happen.
Yeah. Well, there was an issue when I was saying about how you identify yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You self-identify as female. That came up on Facebook where someone who's been kind of a pain in the neck, who takes everything literally, was asking a guy, was saying, so does that, I don't understand what that means. Does that mean if I consider myself a woman, I can, it's like, yeah, if you want to, I guess. But, you know, obviously it's meant for transgenders,
mm-hmm.
or people who are whatever continuum they are transgender. You know, it's like, if you consider yourself female or woman, then yeah, sure, it can apply.
It's like, dude, you know what it means, and don't you have better things to do?
Yeah, then pick at it. I mean, stop it. You know, just stop wasting my time. I think he may be the only person I ever I might have blocked him. I can't remember if I finally made him, kept him, whatever you call it, blocked him on Facebook. I don't remember. I got sick of him.
Blocked. Yeah, you can unfriend and you can also block too.
Oh, so anyway, I was going to say about fear. Oh, I'm really curious to know what you think of Fearful Symmetries when you read it, because it's not pure horror, whatever that means. It's not only horror, and I mean, it is a combination. There's weird fiction in there that is dark, but not necessarily horror, and some readers will probably hate it. We actually got a terrible review. I'll mention. I'm not reposting it. I'm not telling anyone about it because I'm telling the world here. We got slammed on Rue Morgue. I mean, the person who reviewed the book only liked 2 stories. I was like, okay, and I'm not sure who the person is. I mean, I Googled him, but I never, I couldn't really get any information, and I'm not sure what he hated about it so much. But I think it is a combination of horror. There's a little bit of dark fantasy, and there's some stuff that I think is dark, but is really, really weird. And I think some readers the readers who like what I do will enjoy it no matter what. The people who say, I want to read horror and I can tell the difference, and I'm not going to read this because it's not horror, well, then they're going to hate the book. Because I try to do a variety of tone, voice, plays. I mean, when I put together an anthology, and it's much harder actually to do a non-theme anthology than it is to do a theme anthology. Because in non-theme anthology, you really have to work as you're working with the book, as the stories come in, to kind of say, okay, I have too many of this kind of story, don't write this kind of story. And I think, in a way, you really need to herd the cats, shall we say, as they're writing their stories, as they're producing things. And I think much more so than with the theme anthology. Yeah. So I'm curious to know if you like it.
Yeah, I think it looks like an excellent... I was just saying, I think the table of contents, the lineup of authors you have, or, knowing, all their usual work, I think it's one I'm definitely looking forward to.
Thanks. I hope you like it.
You're not going to please everybody all the time either. Some people are just going to be pissy because that's the way they are.
Right. Well, what's interesting to me, okay, one story, PW didn't like 2 of the stories by name. And this guy in Rue Morgue who reviewed it, he loved only 2 stories, and one of the ones that PW hated by name. So it's like, okay, great. Then, different opinion here.
Yeah, and by the way, thanks for what your answer on the gender question, because it wanting to do as cliche and hokey as it may sound, I've always want to do the right thing, whatever that is. It's not always the easiest thing, but I felt about it pretty much like you said, that I just need to be looking for the best stories, period. But at the same time, having this attitude that everyone is welcome.
And make it clear, and try to make it clear that everyone's welcome, and see if. Right. I mean, I know some magazines and webzines decide that they specifically say we welcome people of color, and it's like, to me that's like, I don't know. I guess I thought it was self-evident that if you are running a magazine that would be obvious, but I do think. I try to certainly keep my eyes open for what's going on out there and who's writing, and there are a lot of interesting new writers coming up, a lot in science fiction, and as I said, in fantasy. I think not as many in horror, although there are some, and I think it's really interesting what people are doing. And some writers, of course, write science fiction, fantasy, and horror, and you have no idea what they're going to do next, and that's interesting. Those people often get ignored by the specific genres, because I mean, I have a writer I use a lot who I've published on Tor.com. I've bought stories by her for the year's best, and also a horror story from her, and she's going to be big at some point. But I don't. Right now, she's writing all over the place, which I like as short stories. But it's going to be hard when she finishes her first novel. Like, what are they going to make her do? You know, is she going to be stuck in a genre or not? Yeah. And writers like that, I embrace them. I love Pat Cadigan writes science fiction, fantasy, and horror. Liz Hand writes science fiction, fantasy, and horror. George Martin, Martin is no longer writing many short stories, but he wrote science fiction, fantasy, and horror. And I think the best writers, some of the best writers, do that. They're able to and interested in writing in the genre in all three, and they don't think of, well. To be a writer, I think when you're writing, you really just have to write what you feel and do it, and then think about what genre it is after the fact. With short fiction, which with novels it's much more complicated because you have to sell it to an agent, you have to sell it to a publisher, and then they have to sell it to the marketing people. But with short stories, I think writers should just do what the hell they want and figure out who to sell it to after the fact.
Absolutely. Yeah, I know. And then getting back specifically to Lovecraft, you know, a subgenre, not just a genre. You know, I guess I wonder if you know, another potentially touchy question coming up, if and I don't pretend to know the answer, but if 50%, if it's not 50-50 men, women reading Lovecraftian fiction, is it reasonable to expect that anyone can publish 50-50? Are there 50-50?
How do we know how many people are reading it? How do you know what percentage of male females are reading it?
I don't. I'm curious to see what you think.
But it doesn't matter. I mean, I don't care. I mean, I would hate to think that readers who read my anthology, if a reader only wants to read their own gender, then we've got real problems here, okay? Yeah. First of all, so that would mean men wouldn't read any of my books because I'm a female editor. You know, it's like I can't think that way as an editor. It's like I'm assuming that male and female people are going to read my books. And hopefully my editors would think that, or they're not going to buy my books. They don't think only females are going to read a book, or males. So I mean, it's not to, you know, I don't know where I'm going with this. We don't know who. If everyone knew who was reading what, everything would be a bestseller.
Yeah.
Right. We knew what people wanted. If the editors, if publishers knew what readers wanted, everything would be a bestseller, and they wouldn't publish anything that's not. Yeah.
Well, all you can do, if you're an editor, all you can do is select the best stories you can select and let everything else.
I mean, things have changed for better. I remember, 10, 15 years ago, I remember in one of my the year's best fantasy and horror, I was accused in a review of publishing mostly females in the horror area, and it's like I counted it up, and it was still a majority of guys. It was like maybe a hand. I mean, it was. It may not have been the year's best because that's such a mix. It was always complicated by who bought which story, you know, Terry or me, or it might have been a different anthology, but they assumed, you know, because there were more women than they were used to, they said, oh, women are dominating the anthology. And I can't, no, there's still 12 men to like 4 women, or 5 women. You can't count. You just are so...
All you got to do is look at the table of contents.
You're just not used, you just believe that any women in an anthology means they're dominating the anthology.
Right.
And that's wrong.
That's very insulting.
And it's changed, I hope. I mean, it's certainly changed somewhat, and I think that's important.
I mean, as a reader, I always have tried to kind of judge the fiction on its own merits, you know, not on who is written by, you know. But do you ever find it hard? You know, I know some people, friends, if you know, they might be a fan of an author or enjoy an author's fiction, and then maybe, let's say, they meet the author and the author is rude or not as friendly or has posted stuff online that, you know, is, you know, not the nicest stuff, or involved in like stuff in forums, for example. You know, when an author is like kind of tarnished in your eyes that way, does it make reading their fiction harder? You know, I know some people who have trouble reading fiction by certain authors for reasons like that, because it's hard for them to kind of separate what they know about the person. Do you ever run into that kind of problem ever?
You mean with people whose stories I buy?
I mean, well, I just know you read a lot, kind of obviously what's out there, and
like the Harlan Ellison factor, you mean?
Yeah, I mean,
Harlan's a wonderful writer. I'm not going to comment on other things about him. We're friends, quote unquote. And Harlan is a very generous person, and he's also very difficult at times. I'm trying to think of.
I just wonder if there's a lot of readers out there, I guess, who kind of run into that problem, who when they're reading the fiction, if it's an author who they've had dealings with or seen stuff like that, really rubs them the wrong way, if it makes it that much harder to read the fiction,
Probably it does. But so I think it's a responsibility of anyone who's in a public face to try to not be rude to the people who like their work. On the other hand, if someone has a political stance that you hate, are you gonna still read their work? I don't know.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
It's up to you. I mean, can you separate their work from who they are? I read Celine, some novel by him, Dirty Tender Night, I think. I mean, he was a rabid anti-Semite, I think, but I read him and found him interesting. I mean, I read Lovecraft. I haven't read Lovecraft for a long time, but I mean, I read the original Lovecraftian stuff. He was a racist and anti-Semite and God knows what. So, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, someone brought that racism thing up again on the message board a few weeks ago, and I basically said, I'm kind of tired of talking about it. I probably, if I met Lovecraft, I don't know that we would have gotten along that well, but I love the themes of Lovecraft, and I know that there's some authors personally that I don't care to be around, and I think they're really talented, and I like their work. So who knows?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a personal question in the sense that every person has to make their decision whether they're willing to read someone whose politics or personal stances are objectionable to them. I mean, it's I really think it's an individual decision.
Yeah. Well, I want to remind everybody watching about that Lovecraft's Monsters just came out.
Wrong cover. Sorry.
I know. I'm sorry. This is the only one they gave me.
I know. The right cover.
There you go. Thank you, Rick. Put Rick up on the screen here. Keep holding it up, Rick.
Okay. Use the cover.
Sorry, that's the only one they gave me.
It's an ebook too.
But Lovecraft's Monsters, it's a very, very good anthology, and pick it up.
I would love doing another original Lovecraftian anthology if someone will pay me to do it.
So would we.
Maybe not another reprint one, but an original.
Yeah, we'd love that too, because I know it would be great. So. Okay, well, I don't want to keep you too long. Is there anything else? You guys have any other questions for Ellen before we let her go?
Oh, did that guy ever come back with what he meant by psychedelic fiction?
Oh, good question. Let me check my email. Oh, yes, he did. He goes, psychedelic is a term I've associated with surrealist, experimental science fiction, new wave science fiction.
Oh.
A lot of people say the Dangerous Visions anthology was the defining collection of this movement. Do any newer authors' stories, publications come to mind? No.
I mean, no. The new wave was of its time. I mean, it was very much of its time. It was a total. It was experiment. There was a lot of experimental work done. Most of it unsuccessful. Some very successful in the sense of working or not whether it's sold or not. Here's my cat again. She's come back. Is anyone doing new wave work? It would be dated. I mean, there are different things going on all the time. I mean, fiction, genre fiction, science fiction mutates. I mean, it would be going backwards to do that. Yeah, we've already.
Right.
The literary has taken over, which is good. I mean, it's not to say there weren't literary works before the New Wave. Literary in the sense, using language in different ways. I mean, there were people who were before the New Wave who were doing that, but not many. I mean, science fiction wasn't known for that. But to say you wanted New Wave now, it's like it wouldn't be called that. It would be backwards thinking. You have to. What's a new thing? So.
All right. Well, thanks, Ellen. I really appreciate you coming on the show.
I mean, welcome. Thank you.
Nice to meet you, Ellen.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Ellen.
And I'm not going to hold it up again, but Lovecraft's because it's the wrong cover. But Lovecraft.
I'll hold it up.
Yes, thank you. Thanks. So when will this be up online so my mom can listen to it? I didn't say anything horrible, did I? I think I cursed.
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
It will probably hit YouTube in about half an hour, 45 minutes. So.
Okay. Thanks. Great. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Ellen. I appreciate you being on.
Sorry about the glitches at the beginning.
Oh, no. It happens. Google Hangouts already. So.
Okay.
Thanks
Bye-bye.
a lot. Thanks for being here, Rick and Dustin.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.